So, what we're going to move now is on the Kurdish case. And we've got two speakers. I'll introduce them one by one. The first speaker we're going to have is, on my right, is Ali House. And he's a lawyer, and he's a High Court advocate of Kurdish origin. He practices human rights and criminal law in London. And he plays a very active part in the Turkish and Kurdish community. He's a spokesperson for the Peace Council of Britain since 2009. He's particularly interested in cases involving criminalization of communities and then public interest motives. He's currently preparing for a study of PhD in anti-terror law and practice. So welcome to Ali House.
Thank you for having me today. I feel a bit ill, so as you probably gathered, so when I'm speaking you may find it difficult at times to hear me. I'm going to try my best though. I think to understand the repression of the Kurdish people in Turkey, we have to look at it from the very roots of its history. The roots of the current repression stem from the... Sorry?
Stand up, people.
Stand up.
Sorry.
It's not feeling well.
The reason why I didn't stand up is because if Stella says so, I think I will be alright. I think the repression of the Kurdish people in Turkey to date stems from the birth of the Turkish state nationalism, and which began with the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1914 and 15. What I propose to do is take you through I want to use an analogy of a train ride through time, where the repression of the Kurdish people is represented by the stops that we're going to stop at, and the train itself is the Kurdish people. So our train starts in 1914. Here we see the first years of the Kurds, where they used where false hope is given to them when they help the Turkish state to defend the Turkish borders against foreign enemies. Our first stop on the train is 1923 in Switzerland, Lausanne. At this juncture, the Lausanne Treaty is signed, and the borders of modern-day Turkey are formally announced as the successor state of the Ottoman Empire. Once forming the borders of Turkey, the treaty carved Kurdistan into 4 states of current-day Turkey, Syria, Iraq and Iran, with the largest parts being in Turkey and Iran. The next stop that we stop at is 1924. Here, we see the first real Kurdish uprising in the leadership of Sheikh Said between 1924 and 1925, which carried both ethnic and religious motives, and which formed against the newly formed Republican regime. As people will know, or might know, these were harshly suppressed. It is broadly speaking at this juncture that we also see that Turkey's newly formed Republican government adopted an exclusionary, secular, ethnic-based conception of the Turkish citizenship, and denied the authenticity of Kurdish claims to ethnic distinctiveness. This also applied to other ethnicities in Turkey, such as the Laz, Alevis, Ezidis, and so on. It is as a result of this Sheikh Said rebellion that the special court, known as the Independence Tribunal, was established in 1926 in order to curb the opposition of the Republican regime. Again, the law for the maintenance of the public order was passed to deal with the rebellion on the 4th of March 1925, and gave the government exceptional powers, including the authority to shut down subversive groups, and allowed the administration to ban any organization and shut down media organizations such as, at the time, there were 8 periodicals in Istanbul and several provincial papers in practice, leaving the government with only 2 national newspapers, National Sovereignty in Ankara and the Republic in Istanbul. 9 of the journalists that were prosecuted were sent to Diyarbakir for trial. When they promised to submit, they were returned to Istanbul. Sheikh Said, the leader of the rebellion, was then captured in April the 15th, and along with 46 of his fellow members, and convicted by the Independence Tribunal in Diyarbakir and hanged in 1925. This therefore ended an era for the first real opposition by the Kurds. Takes us to the next stop on our train ride. Here that we see the second rebellion in Kurdish history by Seyit Rıza in the mid-1930s in the province of Dersim. This was after the passing of the law numbered 1164 by the Turkish Grand National Assembly in order to consolidate the authority in the process of Turkification of religious and ethnic minorities. On 1st of November 1936, during a speech in Parliament, the founder of the Turkish Republic, Atatürk, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, acknowledged that the situation in Dersim as Turkey's most important internal problem. So essentially he saw the Kurdish uprising in Dersim as a real internal problem. Indeed, it was for this reason that the law on resettlement, which marked the Turkification process beginning with Dersim, in September 1937, Seyit Rıza saw the same fate of his predecessor and was hanged in the province of Erzincan when he attended for peace talks. It is clear from the beginning that the government in Ankara had decided on the eventual complete assimilation of the Kurds by force if necessary, wherever and whenever serious nationalist resistance ensured. This moves on. We can now pass a few steps and few stops, and stop at 1979, where the PKK, the Kurdistan Works Party, is formed. This is an armed resistance group formed with the leadership of Abdullah Öcalan, who spent his later years as a student formalizing the theoretical and practical basis for his resistance. Our next stop is 1982, when the famous military coup takes place in Turkey, and all left-wing and Kurdish, in brackets PKK members are rounded up and imprisoned. This coup, although never put in this way by the Turkish officials, was in fact a coup on the fears of the growing PKK. Here we see the most horrific employment of torture and killings in prisons and elsewhere. Crucially, we see the enactment of new Turkish constitution in 1982. By the enforcement of laws through the new constitution and the establishment of legal procedure and practice, any activity harmful to the national unity and territorial integrity of the Turkish Republic is outlawed. Our next stop takes us to 1983, where the Turkish state banned the use of the Kurdish language in an attempt to force assimilation of those who were standing outside the mainstream understanding of what is meant to be Turkish. This act was intended to finally bring linguistic minorities into the fold of the state. Our next stop is 1984. Here the PKK formally announces its armed resistance against the Turkish state repression of Kurdish people. Whilst Kurdish uprisings were frequently repressed without protracted efforts from central state during the early years of the Turkish Republic, the conflict initiated by the PKK from the late 1970s to early 1980s escalated and spiraled out of control. This conflict continues to this day. The presence of the Kurds and any demand by them for autonomy is seen as a threat to the Turkish state itself and branded as terrorist, and hence dealt with in the sphere of anti-terror legislation and practice discourse. Again, the establishment of the Turkish Republic, Turkey, has maintained systematic attempts to coerce the Kurds, to assimilate them and to the Turkish cultural language and identity. 1991 is our next stop, where further affronts were made with the creation of the anti-terrorism law of 1991. This act banned any written or oral propaganda, assemblies and demonstrations which, by whatever means, objective and ideas, are aiming to destroy the inseparable unity of the territory, nation and republic, as recognized in the constitution. This meant that even the use of the word Kurdistan or Kurds as a people was seen as a threat, as a terrorist threat to the Turkish, by the Turkish government. Sorry, I've got a red card, but I've just got a few more comments to make. The role of the judiciary and the laws enacted has played a major role in the suppression of Kurdish people. In deepening the conflict between the Kurdish struggle and the rights of the rights and the Turkish state. Indeed, many laws, whether pertaining to political parties or associations, are restrictive enough to easily invite investigations by state prosecutors. It therefore goes without saying that due to the very fact that the underlying feature of the Kurdish question as a separate ethnic identity, almost any type of political activity runs foul of such laws. With respect to the Kurdish question, two institutions have played a major role: the Constitutional Court and the State Security Court, which were abolished in 2008 but replaced with a new system of courts with special authority. We then move on to 2006, when a further act was enacted. This act meant that this was a new anti-terror act, which was passed, which was passed and gave increased powers to the judiciary on the one hand, while significantly curtailing civil rights and human rights on the other. We then move on to 2009, where after a major victory of the pro-Kurdish DTP in local elections, a significant prosecution was initiated against thousands of Kurdish people. The current legal justification for the arrest and imprisonment of many thousands of people, of pro-Kurdish politicians, activists, academics, deputies, mayors, lawyers, journalists, members of civil society organizations, and human rights activists under the premise of KCK operations are an overt example of the state's use of the legal system to repress the Kurdish people with the branding of terrorism at the heart of its agenda. There are many more stops, but I'm thoughtful of the time that's been allowed to me. I want to round up by just simply saying that there's three main dimensions to the repression of Kurdish people in Turkey, and that's political, legal, and economic. Political, due to the significant 10% electoral threshold preventing Kurdish parties from competing in elections on an equal footing. Legal, the arbitrary arrest, detention and prosecution of thousands of Kurdish people, the closure of pro-Kurdish political parties, newspapers, magazines in Kurdish and the Kurdish language itself. And economic, whilst since the inception of the Turkish Republic, there has been an unspoken economic embargo on the Kurdish southeast, which has left the region highly uneducated, in poverty, and therefore undeveloped. The DTP, for instance, is the only political party which is not given funds from the national treasury. In turn, there are clearly political and legal dimensions from Europe and other parts of the world, such as the US, who support Turkey's repression of the repression of their Kurdish people. I think we can elaborate on this once we're finished with Mil.
Thank you very much.